Hi, everyone, and welcome to Payments. And we're here talking to my good friend, Brian Lewis, who is the CEO of identity verification company Intellicheck. Brian, thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure.
So, you guys just had a record quarter. I was on the call. It was fantastic. Congratulations. Tell us a little bit about what are some of the key drivers that drove your quarter and your success, and some of the things that are driving identity verification in the banking business.
Sure. So I think some of the drivers are just the fact that it is so easy to steal somebody's identity. More and more markets are opening up to us. Our core market is still banking, financial services, but expanding into others. And certainly what we're seeing, a new client that we're bringing on is in the payment space. And it's, again, how do I authenticate? How do I make sure that the person I'm dealing with is exactly who they say they are? Because the fraud is rampant. The FBI just came out last week with sort of a warning, and specifically about scams and fraud with the elderly and the amount of money wired. They're saying $3.4 billion going from an older person into a fake financial institution. So we're working to help the banks that we deal with to make sure both sides of that trade, they know who they are, and it is a legitimate reason to move money.
So you mentioned you just signed a payments provider. I'm assuming it's a payments provider. But how do you counsel them? What do you tell them they should do about their policies, procedures, and technologies that will help them at least close the gap on this problem?
What we help and work with them to do is to provide basically frictionless ways to somebody to prove who they are. A Javelin study said that about 62% of applications or processes that require people to authenticate themselves are 4 or more steps, and almost 10% are 9 or more. People drop out. They want to do that. So we work with them to figure out how do we seamlessly integrate identity validation into their process. A lot of different ways to do it, a lot of different tools you can use. And we work with them to figure out which are the most accurate for what they need.
So, Brian, how do you see this space evolving? I mean, when I was listening to your earnings call, I was really struck by how far you can look out and see some of the problems that might not be huge right now, but are going to be. How do you keep pace with that, and how do you counsel your clients to do that?
I think you need to, when we're talking to them, we're talking about all the different ways that we see fraud take place, in financial crimes. If you think about it, account takeover can start with, I get a hold of your email address, right? And if you've got my email address, you can change every password I have. So how do you authenticate? How do you see the signs that might be the first step in account takeover? And then make sure before it's possible for the account to be taken over, you've authenticated that person. Because account takeover has actually been the fastest growing form of identity theft, far outpaced any other version of it in 2023. And the size of the fraud in those examples is about double what it is if I just go in and use your identity to go get credit. So it really is important that people are thinking about not just sort of the steps in front of them, but what are the other things? How do I make sure that this really is the right person when they're trying to change the address on the account, the phone number, or the email? Those are the things that now give me access to you in a number of ways that really are simple. I don't have to go into a store to try and steal your identity. Then I'm doing it all online.
Interesting. So tell us a little bit, unpack a little bit how Intellicheck's technology can help solve that problem.
Well, if you think about any time that you're asked to prove who you are, if you're opening an account, you're moving things, generally people are going to ask you for two things, right? Government issued ID, and then your social security number, the last 4 or last 6, whatever. Now, the simplest way to steal your identity is I buy it all online, right? And if you think about, say, the United Healthcare breach, about 1/3 of all Americans, your data is out there now. AT&T, 73 million people, including me, my data is out there. I can buy all of that for $20 to $30. Then in bulk, I can buy a government issued lookalike ID for $40, right, in bulk. Now I'm you. I can go out and pretend to be you and go shopping, open accounts, all that sort of thing. Our technology, the core that we do is we authenticate that driver's license, or state issued ID is real. And, I like to talk about our company, and there's a reason that 28 state level law enforcement agencies use us. We're that accurate at it. And that's what got us into so much of the banking, because it is so crucial. The long-term effect of identity theft is huge. There's a woman who just had $81,000 moved out of her Wells Fargo account into a Citibank account that somebody opened up doing identity theft. Then that money was taken out of the account. Now, she has said she's moving banks, right? So, Wells Fargo lost the long-term value of that client. So it's not just the initial, it's also the long-term. And that's what we help everybody with.
So I think our viewers might be or might not be surprised to know that you actually have a pile of fake IDs.
I do. This is
There it is.
every state, right? And I think the
Oh,
fun
wow.
thing is, most of these are real IDs. Everybody thinks that a real ID provides, additional security. It doesn't really. It's just additionally hard to get. You got to prove who you are. Within 30 days of a state coming out with real ID, it's for sale on the web.
Brian, we know that AI has proven itself so far as a fraud detector and defender, but it's also created deep fakes. Could you kind of characterize for us how AI has affected your business?
Like, I think certainly people are using AI or trying to use AI and machine learning to crack the code in the barcode, which is really, really difficult to do. I don't, so far, knock wood, they've not been able to do it. The security features are very hidden and hard to decipher just using machine learning. The machine learning has done a very good job at replicating what the license should look like. In the majority of ways that people, in my industry who are looking to authenticate a driver's license, they're looking to see are all the things in the right space, the right size fonts, all those types of things. That's what machine learning has done a great job of copying, and why visual inspection of a government issued ID like that just doesn't work. They've got it down.
So if I am a bank or a payments company, how do I pick where to put my money? I mean, budgets are constrained. The economy is still kind of, the jury's still out on the economy. How do I decide where to put my money when I'm talking about identity verification?
We look at what we charge our clients, and then we know what they're, saving on the fraud side, because oftentimes they tell us, and it's like, a 4,000% return. So I think where you should be thinking about how do you put your money is, one, what's the efficacy of the system that you're using? And then again, importantly, is think about the consumer journey. How do you make it simple, right? Because the vast majority of people aren't crooks. So don't treat them like crooks to stop that little small percentage that are crooks. And if you've got the right tools in place, you can do that. If you don't, you need to put them through more and more and more steps, so that, if you're only 65% certain in step one, which, maybe is authenticating the license, you need to do more things. If you're much more certain of that government issued ID being real, you can cut the number of steps that customer has to go through, less abandonment, happier customers, those types of things.
I'm looking at the calendar just before, and I was like, wow, I just listened to Q1 earnings calls, and it's already halfway through Q2. What are you looking at for the balance of the year? What do you think our viewers should be looking at for the balance of the year in identity?
I think you're going to see more and more of it, right? I think a couple of things are going to happen. I think you're going to see consolidation in the industry. We've seen some of it. I think you're going to see, continue to see that. I think that also, just from what we're seeing from inbound leads and the markets that we're in, you're going to see identity showing up in more places than you thought. We've got one of our customers provides email services. They're going to have everybody in the US re-authenticate themselves, because they now understand the danger of people getting your email. So I think we're going to start to see some of those things that periodically you're going to have to reprove who you are. And if you make it simple, people don't mind. You make it difficult, I'm going somewhere else.
Well said. Okay, that's a wrap for this edition of Payments TV. My guest has been Brian Lewis, CEO of Intellicheck. Brian, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.